Hey everyone, it's me again, Brittany, and I'm here today to do my May wrap-up, and I actually did really good this month. I read 10 books, which is much better than I've been doing in all the other months, so yay, I think I'm finally out of my reading slump. It was an amazing month, and I did a lot of audiobook reading, or audiobook listening. People tend to get mad when I say I read an audiobook, but in my head it just kind of transfers that way, you know, because when I listen to an audiobook it just stores the same way as when I read an audiobook, so it's hard for me to say the difference. So I'm not going to be saying which ones I read physically and which ones I listened to, just because I know I'm going to say that I read the audiobooks and then you guys are going to get mad, so I'm just, you know, I'm not going to tell you. You probably know if you were watching my reading vlogs. I actually had such a good reading month. Most of the books that I read were 4 or 5 stars, which is insane. I have my bullet journal right here. That's what I'm looking down at because I just want to keep everything in order. So it was the Asian readathon this month. I'm gonna go over the books and the prompts and everything at the very end that I managed to read for that. Let's kind of jump in. So the first book that I'm gonna talk about is Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This book was incredible. I've been putting off reading the second book in the Illuminae files for so long now. I read Illuminae 2 years ago, maybe longer, and I just, for whatever reason, hadn't picked up Gemina, and I thought I wouldn't like it as much, but I finally picked it up. I wasn't gonna say which ones I listened to, but this one's actually important because I did listen to this on audio and it was absolutely phenomenal. People have always said that the audiobooks for the Illuminae files are insanely good, and I have to agree. It was so amazing. They had a full cast. They had a full cast in the way that I feel like full cast should always be performed, where in each other's parts they actually talk themselves instead of like having the other narrator fake their voice. It was so well done. It was so fantastic. All the files made so much sense. It just felt like you were listening to the trials. It felt like a TV show. It was great. I did keep up with this one physically though. I wanted to like mark all the places that it just looked really cool. Basically, if you didn't know, the Illuminae files is about Gemina is actually about a different story. Each book I think follows different characters, and I think in the last book they combine together. But to give you a brief history about this one, we follow Hannah and Nick as they live in the space station Heimdall, which is basically this port where you can travel through the rest of the universe. And they live there as Bitech kind of attacks, and Bitech is something that we were introduced to in Illuminae. This is actually happening, I think, shortly after the events of Illuminae, and it's so fascinating. There is so much talk about like physics and space-time continuum and just like really cool things that I just didn't know were gonna be included in Gemina. Hannah and Nick are fantastic characters. I think I like them better than the ones in Illuminae. And Hannah is just this super sassy daughter of the commander. I believe he's the commander of Heimdall, and she has learned how to fight her entire life. She loves fighting. She loves fighting for what's right, and you just see her have to do exactly that as she goes through something that no teenager should have to go through. And Nick, he's this kind of badass boy who is part of a gang. His family has a gang and he's a part of it, and you just kind of follow both their stories because his story is not as it seems. He may seem like this bad boy gang leader thing that has to serve his time, but maybe the situation isn't as it seems, and I just love seeing their stories kind of connect because you kind of suspect that there might be a romance, but seeing everything that happens in this book is incredible. Oh, and I gave Gemina 5 stars. It was out of this world. I didn't even mean to say that, but it is, you know, out of this world. Okay. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. Just before I talk about it, I'm gonna let you know I gave it 5 stars. It's absolutely fantastic. This is another series that I've actually been putting off that people told me that I would likely enjoy. And it is a fantasy, but the magic system in this world is so incredible. We follow a few characters in this book. It's a multiple perspective story. We have Safia and Isolde, who are thread sisters, which you'll learn what that means if you read the story, but basically they just have a connection that makes them even more than just best friends. Their magics are connected, their souls are connected, and they are always living for each other. Their friendship is so beautiful. That's actually probably my favorite part about this story. And the magic system is just so interesting. I know I already said that, but like Safia, she's a truth witch, and then we have Isolde, who is a thread witch, but like not in the normal way of a thread. It's so good. And we also follow a prince from a different land who's trying to make connections for his kingdom so that it doesn't, you know, just keep dying. It's so good. It's so much more than that too. That is just the bare minimum. There's so much packed in this story and it's so small. And I just can't wait to get to Wind Witch. It is one of my most anticipated reads for 2019 and I just feel like I'm going to love it. 2 5 stars already and I'm only in the very beginning. The next 2 books that I'm going to talk about kind of go together and you'll see. The first one being Furthermore by Tahada Mafi. I loved this book. I loved this book so much. It was just so good. I listened to this on audio and it was just one of the most fantastic audio experiences I've ever really had. It's just so nice because the narrator himself, he's actually talking to you in the book. So through the audiobook, it sounds like he's telling you the story and that you're actually there. And it just feels so realistic and it's so witty and funny. And the world that you're in is so whimsical. The rules are not the rules that we play by, and I think that's my favorite part about it. So we follow Alice in this, who has no color, and she lives in a land called Farronwood that uses how much color you have in your skin to understand how close you are to magic. So the more colorful you are, the more magic you have, and the more connected to the land you are, because they just live in tandem with their land and that is how they have magic. But she is colorless and so they just assume that she has no magic at all to give. But we just follow her story as she tries to explain to everyone that she does have magic inside her and she is just as magical as any other person, and it makes no sense why they would just assume because she is colorless that she can't connect to magic. And it's so beautiful because there's so much more than that. She's also traveling with a companion as they try to find her father who went missing a couple years ago, and everyone assumes him to be dead because you can't live away from Farronwood. You can't be disconnected from your magic for that long without dying. So they go to this land of Furthermore, which is dangerous and filled with rules that make absolutely no sense to Alice and what's his name? And Oliver. So these rules make no sense to them and they have to learn and live with this new land and try and find her father, and it's just so beautiful and I loved it so much and it's so heartwarming, guys. 5 stars if you couldn't tell. And the next book is Witchwood, also by Tahada Mafi. This is in the same world and I just loved it so much. I was a little worried because I knew that Alice wasn't like the main character in this, but Laylee is just so... she's so perfect. She's so beautiful and good and just... she's a mort de jour, which basically means that she has to take care of her land's dead. And she lives in Witchwood, so every person that dies she has to take care of and she has to go through a certain ritual to make sure that they can pass on in the afterlife, and she has all this responsibility all by herself. There used to be more mort de jours, but her father went a little crazy after her mother died and she is left alone. This child is left alone to deal with all this responsibility of taking care of every single one of the dead in this world. No one cares. Everyone just kind of does it and knows that she's suffering, that she's starving, that she can't provide for herself because they're all so scared of her, so they don't even try to help her, and she still has to deal with all these dead and she is slowly losing herself. I think this story has a lot to do in a way with depression and losing the color in your life in a way, and she's dealing with a lot, and she's dealing with a lot of grief because she never really got to grieve over her mother. We do have Alice and Oliver reappear in this story and they're there to kind of help her. It's just, there's so much more going on in this and it's so beautiful and everyone is so accepting in this book and just trying to help each other, and it's really touching. There's this little boy who I'm not gonna explain how because I think like when it happens it's really funny, but he basically has a connection with a spider, and I never thought I would learn to love a spider so much, and a little boy who is weird and loves his spider. I mean, not that it's weird to love your spider, but I'm just very scared of spiders. It was just so beautiful and I really loved it. I want to read you guys one of the quotes just because I think it's, I just remembered that like there's a mom in this that reminds me of my mom and it's great. And one of my favorite quotes from this book was how very important and infuriating it is to have to remind a smart person not to be so stupid as to give up on themselves. And it's just such a beautiful story, guys. I know like these books don't get nearly enough hype on BookTube for just how like touching and beautiful they are and how whimsical and lyrical and just they all revolve around friendship too. I've been loving stories that just have a strong base in friendship. I don't know, I mean, I do know why, because friendship is amazing. So yeah, if you couldn't tell, I also gave this one 5 stars. We were on a 5-star streak and now I have to talk about a book I didn't like. So next up is Circle of Shadows by Evelyn Skye. I gave this book a 2.75, but I think I was being a little generous with it. I don't know. I did not enjoy the story nearly as much as I thought I would have, and that's such a bummer because Evelyn Skye is the author of The Crown's Game, which you guys know was one of my favorite books of last year, so it was so surprising to get this book and to read it and to not feel any of the similar emotions I had with Crown's Game. I'm not sure if it's because she was just trying to try out a different kind of writing style with this one or what really, but it just didn't flow. This story felt a lot like telling and not showing, and our main characters just kind of felt like stereotypical, like they were their stereotypes and they didn't have anything else beneath it. They were just that, and there wasn't really reasons for it, and I just felt like a lot of the things could have been resolved if, I don't know, it's not even like miscommunication. I feel like there was a lot of communication, but everyone was being very hard-headed and stubborn, and it was very annoying. I did really enjoy the magic system in this. I think that it's very fascinating. I haven't really told you what this is about. Okay, so basically we follow Sora and Damon, who are, what are they called? They are, oh, they're Geminas. So we follow Sora and Damon, who are Geminas, which basically means like they're parabatai, but in this world. And they are warriors for the Taiga Society, and that means that at birth they were gifted by their moon goddess to learn the magic and fight better than everyone else just so that they could be warriors. We kind of follow them as they're on a mission to they have to infiltrate a clan, basically. A clan that is against their kingdom, against their empress, and learn what they're doing to try and stop them. But we have just a lot more going on than just that, because we have their magic that was very set in stone. They have to learn it, they have to be good at it, they have to know the language for it, and they have to stop while they're doing things to be able to perform their magic. But we're introduced to a very different kind of magic when we find this clan, and it has no rules from what I can tell. And I think that's one of the things that bugged me the most about this book, because that other magic, there doesn't seem to be any limitations, and I don't like it when magic is just yeah, and it still hasn't really been explained to us, so I think that maybe in the next book it might be better, but in this one so far it just seemed highly unrealistic. And there's something that happened with Damon at the end where I was like, okay. I don't know, I kind of saw it coming, but it was also just one of those things like, that's how you're gonna do it. It was weird, and I really didn't like the relationships in this book. I know that was like a very brief summary, but that's all I can really explain without spoiling everything. But I didn't like the relationships in this book. I didn't like how they were formed. I felt like they were all very rushed. I didn't see them being very fluid, or I don't know. As you can tell, I felt very stuck explaining this book, and that's actually how I felt while I read this book. I just felt stuck. It was very, here you go, just take it or leave it, and I didn't like it. It just was very weird. Maybe I just went into it with way too high of hopes, but I'm not really sure. This next book I'm actually so excited about. I loved this book so much that I actually went out and got a copy, but I got a copy of it in the Strand while I was in New York, which was, you know, really cool. That's gonna be 1,000 Endings and Beginnings by Ellen O. I gave this book a 4.5, I believe. Yes, a 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed most of the stories in this book. I thought they were so fascinating. This is basically a anthology and a collection of different Asian mythologies kind of reimagined by the authors in this. And it was so good, guys. It was so good. I loved learning more about different Asian cultures, different Asian myths, and there's just so much in here, so jam-packed, and it's so good. There was barely any stories that I didn't like. I would have given this a 5-star, but there were, I think, 2 or 3 stories where I was just like, they were a no for me, but the rest were just so good. So this one definitely was a 4.5 stars. I highly recommend it. This is my first anthology that I've ever read, but I enjoyed it so, so much. But I really do recommend it if you're in the market for anthologies, or if you'd like to learn more about Asian myths. I think this gave me just a really good basis to start off of and to delve deeper into it later. Really fast, I did want to say like my favorite story in here. It was actually the last one. I've always really loved the myth of the kitsune in Japanese mythology, and the last one has to do with a kitsune, and it's just so beautiful, so tragic, and it was just such a, I don't know, I had chills reading that part, and I just loved it a lot. But there were so many favorites. There was like one about a goddess whose rainbow robe put the sunset colors in the sky, and that story was really beautiful. There was one that was about just grieving her mother's death and kind of losing herself in a video game that was very, very beautiful, and I just really, really enjoyed almost every single story in here. This next book I gave a 4.75 stars. I really, really enjoyed it, but this is kind of the part in my month where I was like, I've been giving way too many 5 stars. I need to be a little harsher, like unless something is like a beyond love, like this is all I'm gonna love this year, and that's gonna be Warcross by Marie Lu. Loved this. I loved this. I don't know why I put it off for so long. I mean, I do, because I was kind of worried it was gonna be like Ready Player One, and I actually didn't like Ready Player One that much. Like, it was cool, but I just didn't love it. And I was worried that it was gonna be too similar to that, but it wasn't at all. We follow a hacker, Amika Chen, who accidentally hacks herself into the Warcross games. And the Warcross games are the most watched thing in the entire world. It is in this virtual reality video game that is just revolutionary in their society. They have an annual game that is bigger than all the others, that has your favorite players from previous games, that you basically are a celebrity once you join, and she accidentally hacks herself into it, something that should be impossible. So she thinks that she is going to be sent to jail right away, but instead the creator of the game flies her out to Japan and asks her to play in it to catch a person that's trying to ruin his game. There's just so much more going on in this story than what it seems. There's a relationship in it that I'm all for. I am so for this relationship. I love it so much. I want it to happen. That is my ship, and I'm going to sync with it. I don't know. The ending was crazy, and I kind of saw it coming, but I didn't, and it was just like, it was one of those things that when you see it coming, you kind of hope it's that. So when it happened, I was actually really pleased, instead of like when you guess a plot twist and then you're kind of sad. It's different. It was just so well done. But there was just like a lot of things at the very end that I just didn't 100% agree with. I think that there were problems where there really shouldn't have been, but I'm not really sure. That's why I didn't give it 5 stars, but other than that, the relationship in this is fantastic. The action in this is amazing. The hacking like terminology is so cool, and Amika Chen is just such a great character. She is another character that's dealing a lot with grief and just has to live on her own at a very, very young age and try and make a living in a world that is just not suited for people that don't have a lot of money. I don't remember what the next one's called, but I know that a lot of people didn't like that one, so I'm very nervous because I can kind of see why, because the ending of this one I was just kind of like, you know, but the entire rest of the book was so good. Oh my gosh, I forgot to talk about The Golden Lily. So I don't have a copy of it, so that's why I didn't talk about it, but I read Golden Lily by Rochelle Mead, and I gave it a 3.75 stars. I actually liked it a lot more than Bloodlines, but I wasn't completely enthralled with it, you know? So basically the Bloodlines series follows Sydney, who is an alchemist, and we meet her at the very end of the Vampire Academy series, so these events happen after those, and she is kind of put on a secret mission to help characters that we actually met in Vampire Academy, and we do get to see our favorite babies from the previous series, but it's mostly following her on this journey, and she is just such a different character to view things from, because we followed Rose Hathaway in the Vampire Academy, and Rose Hathaway is very like Gryffindor. She's very like brave and goes into things without thinking and is reckless, but we have Sydney, who is definitely more Ravenclaw if I was gonna give her anything, because she's just such a logical thinker. She wants to think every step of the plan through. She wants to get everything perfectly right, and she's also dealing with the repercussions from what happened in the previous series. The alchemists just don't really trust her. The alchemists are like kind of this society of people that are meant to protect humans from the vampires in the world, and they just don't trust her right now just because of what happened in the last series. When she's put on this mission, she wants to prove herself to them, and it's just really good. It's very interesting. It has so many important themes being dealt with, and I love seeing Adrian. Adrian's like a very main character in this series, and he's just such a sweet baby. I really thought I would never ship him with anyone but a certain Gryffindor, but I do. I ship it. I don't know. It hasn't really happened yet, but I'm shipping it. That's kind of all I have to say about it. It's a 3.75. It's like great. I mean, it's good, but it's not great, if that makes any sense. I just feel like I have a really high standard now. But if I'd been reading this back when I read Vampire Academy, I definitely would be giving it like 5 stars. Okay, the next book that I read this month was The Case for Jamie by Brittany Cavallero. Oh my god, guys, I loved this. I really sat there for a while just being like, I'm not supposed to give books 5 stars anymore. I'm trying to be, you know, logical or something. But I gave this 5 stars. I loved it so much. So if you didn't know, in the Charlotte Holmes series, we follow Charlotte and Jamie, who are descendants of the once great Sherlock and Watson. Their story is just so interesting because they are really similar to the original Sherlock and Watson, but they are so different. They are teenagers, they meet in boarding school, and Charlotte is just so Sherlocky, but she's just like, I don't even know how to describe her. She's just very logical. She's very hurt. She's been hurt a lot in her life, so she just wants to be alone, and she kind of is okay with being alone, and she doesn't want to be bugged by anyone, and she just kind of wants to live her life and be able to do the things she wants to do, like play her violin and do math and stuff. And she's also trying to live up to this great detective status that Sherlock Holmes once had, because she kind of did solve a mystery when she was like 8 years old or something crazy, and now she's just trying to live up to it, and it's a really big burden on her. So we have to see her struggle a lot. There are very serious topics discussed in these books. There's sexual assault, there is drug abuse, there is way more that I just can't think of off the top of my head, but those are the 2 big ones, I think. And it's just really great to see their friendship just flourish, because we do have Jamie Watson, who just kind of wants to help. He's just kind of there to help and be the muscle and try and help Charlotte out of whatever she's dealing with. But we also see him evolve to not want to always be there for someone that just doesn't care about him. It's just really good, guys. And this one specifically was fantastic. I just feel like you saw the characters grow so much. They are just entirely new and fantastic, and they're just growing. And the ending of this was beautiful. I didn't really describe what this series is about, but just to let you know, in the first one, they are accused of murder, and that's how they kind of have to band together to discover who truly murdered this person. And it goes from there. Each story has its own mystery, and I'm so excited to read the last and final book, but I'm also very nervous because I loved how this one ended, and I thought this one was the end at first, and then I remembered there's another book, so yeah. The last book I read this month, also just one that like tore my heart open, was The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X. Arpan. I gave this 5 stars. No surprise. But this one actually just meant a lot to me. It was a very beautiful and very sad story. We follow Lee after her mother commits suicide, and she knows that her mother has turned into a bird. This is magical realism, so you just accept it. Her mom did turn into a bird. It's not a metaphor. She turned into a bird. And she follows her mom, her bird mom, back to Taiwan so that she can finally meet her grandparents on her mother's side that she never got the chance to meet. There was some big family drama that happened, and they just never talked, and so Lee never got to meet them, but she believes that that's what her mom wants. Her mom wants her to finally meet that side of her family, to become connected to her culture, and it's just really beautiful. It has a lot to do with grief and depression, and it's a very interesting story. Lee is an artist, and she loves to kind of see the world in color. I don't know why I didn't see that at first, like The Astonishing Color of After. This book has a lot to do with color. There's just references here and there to paint colors that I just know because I used to be an art major in my high school. We had majors because it was a magnet school. It was just really beautiful to see. It was just very magical and sad and lovely, and I don't know. There was another quote from this one that I actually really liked, and it was at the very end. And it says, "Because the purpose of memory, I would argue, is to remind us how to live." And those are the 10 books that I read in May. Let's kind of go over which ones counted for which challenges. There were a few books that I just didn't manage to get to, but I think I still completed all the challenges. So for challenge number 1, read any book by an Asian author, I used Furthermore and Witchwood as that because Tahada Mafi is Iranian and Iran is in Asia. There have been so many people that have tried to correct me on this, and you can have your thing about it, but it was on the master list for the Asian readathon, and that is what I'm using it for. So yes. Number 2 was read a graphic novel featuring an Asian character or written, drawn by an Asian author. Someone actually told me that Gemina was illustrated by Marie Lu, which is super cool, and I'm gonna use that as that, but if I'm wrong, please just let me know. And I mean, I didn't complete the challenge then, but I'm pretty sure that that can count for that. Number 3 is read a book featuring an intersectional Asian character or written by an intersectional Asian identity, and that's going to be The Astonishing Color of After. Our main character, Lee, is biracial. She is Taiwanese and American Irish, I believe. Number 4 was read a book by an Asian author that was originally written in their native language. Oh, that's the one that I didn't get. Okay, I was supposed to read Rave Master. I was supposed to read Fairy Tale, the manga, and that would have counted for that and the other challenge that I'm unsure about. But I didn't get to it, which is really annoying because it's such a short novel, but I didn't complete the challenge then. And then number 5 was read the group book, 1,000 Beginnings and Endings, and obviously I did that, so yeah, I did really good. I actually really enjoyed the Asian Readathon. I think it was so fantastic. I learned that I actually really love reading Asian cultures in books. I don't know, I just find it so beautiful, and I've learned so much about different Asian cultures in this readathon, and I think that's really what it was all about, and I've discovered that I really like reading from that point of view, so there's gonna be a lot more books like that in the future. I just had such a good time, and I'm really happy that this readathon was a thing, so thank you so much to all the hosts that made it possible. Let me know if you guys were participating in the Asian readathon, and if you did, what book was your favorite for all the challenges that you finished. Yeah, that's gonna be it for this video today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Goodbye!
We're beautiful creatures.